Today I will explain to you why the Premier League is on a downfall. Now you might think that I'm crazy and the Premier League is just the best league in the world, which I still think it is, but I think it is getting worse each year. This is because one of the main reasons why people claim the Premier League to be the best league in the world is because any team can beat any team, and the quality gap in between teams is not that big. However, this does not seem to be the case this year, as I believe there are 5 or 6 teams that are levels above the rest. And those 6 teams are the classic Big Six of Man City, Man United, Spurs, Chelsea, Liverpool, and Arsenal. The reason that the classic Big Six have finally become the actual Big Six is because they simply have more money than the rest of the teams and have more pulling power. It is impossible for mid-table sides like Brentford, Brighton, Fulham, etc. to stay at the top because their best players are constantly getting poached by the classic Big Six. This is also why whenever a mid-table team has a good season and qualifies for Europe, the next season they are always horrible. Take Nottingham Forest for example. While I think their team will still be decent this season, I don't think they'll reach anywhere near the heights last season because they didn't have enough pulling power to buy world-class players to strengthen their team, even though they qualified for Europe. One reason I think the Premier League was so good last season was because there was a lot of breakout stars from the mid-table teams, leading many of them to get transfers to great clubs. 2 great examples are Bryan Mbeumo and Matheus Cunha, who were definitely their team's best player last season for Brentford and Wolves respectively. And it was pretty obvious they were going to get poached this summer. But it was surprising to many people that they both went to Manchester United. Even after Manchester United's awful season, with them finishing 15th and failing to qualify for Europe, they still have enough money and enough pulling power to get these 2 big players. Brentford finished way higher than Man United last season and were a way better side. But still, Mbeumo opted to join Man United because he knows they are a bigger club and have enough money and pulling power to sign other very good players and turn the team around. Even Benjamin Sesko choosing Manchester United over Newcastle when Newcastle was a much better team than Man U last season, and Newcastle qualified for Champions League football. Now, I'm not for 1 second hating on Manchester United, as I even support Man U in these tough times. But it just goes to show why the classic Big Six will always stay the Big Six no matter what. And it's not even just players, it's also coaches. Look at Thomas Frank, one of the best managers in the Prem last season, being a main factor of why Brentford was successful last season. He moved to Spurs, even though Spurs also had an awful season last year and finished below Brentford. Brentford could have easily had another great season had they managed to keep Thomas Frank, Bryan Mbeumo, and even Yoane Wissa, who looks destined to leave the club, but are forced to sell the players because they are scared of losing them on a free transfer. And the sad part is that while clubs like Brentford and Wolves are getting high fees for their best players, they are unable to sign a solid replacement that will actually be as good as the player they sold because they simply do not have the pulling power. I forgot to mention Mohamed Kudus as well, one of West Ham's best players last season. If he would have stayed, and with Graham Potter having a full preseason and Fulkirk being fit, West Ham could have been a mid-table side this season. But as things stand right now, West Ham could be in a relegation battle with Brentford and Wolves. This goes to show that the big fees these sides got for their best players were really not that useful, as they will be a much worse side than last year. There are tons more examples, like Brighton losing João Pedro and Estepinian, and maybe even Baleba, Bournemouth losing Gyokeres, Dean Holson, and Zabarni, and even Crystal Palace who just lost Eze to Arsenal, and maybe even Guehi to Liverpool. And keep in mind, most of the players these teams are selling are going to their direct rivals in the same league, like Gyokeres going to Liverpool and João Pedro going to Chelsea, and Eze going to Arsenal. So the big 6 sides are just getting stronger, and the mid-table sides below are just getting weaker. This is why I think it's more important than ever this year in the Premier League to not drop points in fixtures you should win. Because teams like Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, and Chelsea are rarely going to drop points other than when they play each other. I haven't even highlighted the fact that the last 2 seasons, the 3 teams that have come up from the championship have gotten relegated in their first season. To be honest, I think every team other than the Big Six and the promoted sides are going to be worse than they were last season. Anyways, I'm just sharing my opinion, and I still think the Premier League is the best league in the world, but at its current trajectory, it's not looking good for the league.